All right, guys. I'm sorry, but cardio is not exercise. I'm gonna explain why. Cardio is physical activity, but it is not exercise. People have thrown the term exercise without actually understanding what it really means. People have conflated the term exercise with physical activity, when in fact, they are completely different. Now, exercise is within physical activity, right? But so physical activity is like a broad term, right? Basically, physical activity is basically anytime you use your body to expend energy, right? So that could be walking, biking, running, cardio, right? Even strength training. But it's not exercise. Exercise is a very specific targeted activity that aims to continuously inroad in fatigue muscle in order to provide an adaptive response. All right? So high intensity strength training is a prime example of proper exercise. I'm gonna repeat, high intensity training only is exercise. Anything else is not exercise. Because with high intensity strength training, you are continuously providing continuous muscular loading. So basically when you're doing a bicep curl, you provide continuous muscular loading, right? In order to reach muscle failure, once you reach muscle failure, you activate the mTOR pathway and all these cascade of reactions in the body in order to provide an adaptive response, which are muscular strength and size, cardiovascular and metabolic efficiency, and the strengthening of bone and connective tissue. So these are the trainable factors of functional ability that you actually get in response to doing what? Exercise, which is what? High intensity strength training. See, the thing with high intensity strength training is that it's a very specific activity, right? That aims just to increase your physical capacity. See, cardio is a very ineffective way of fatiguing muscle. There's a reason why cardio does not help you get bigger legs, right? Like I said, exercise aims to stimulate five of the trainable factors of functional ability, right? When you do exercise, it's supposed to improve physical capacity in the aspect of muscle strength and size, right? Then you have cardiovascular and metabolic efficiency, and then you have the strengthening of bone and connective tissue. These are all the 5 trainable factors of functional ability that you actually end up getting by going to muscle failure. It only happens when you go to muscle failure. Now, what's the safest way of going to muscle failure without risking injury, and also the most time efficient? It's by taking one set to failure. By taking a bicep curl or a leg press or a chest press machine, taking that to failure is a prime example of what exercise it actually should be, or actually is. One set to failure on a leg press is more exercise than 2 hours of cardio. All right? Because 2 hours of walking or cardio, like running and stuff, even though it does fatigue muscle, it doesn't continuously inroad muscle in the aspect that strength training does. Because when you do one set to failure on a leg press, for example, that set roughly, lasts like 60 to 90 seconds. But during that time, you are continuously inroading and fatiguing muscle. So what happens is, like, when you first start out your set with the leg press, you start recruiting the slow twitch muscle fibers. But then as you keep going throughout the set and your muscles end up getting weaker and weaker, basically the nervous system has to call upon new muscle fibers, bigger and new muscle fibers, in order to sustain the activity of doing a leg press. All right? And then eventually what's going to happen is going to get to the point where you have recruited all muscle fibers, including the high order motor units, and then that's when you reach muscle failure. And by the time you can't push the weight up anymore, and you are dying and you're trying as hard as you can to push, but you can't hold the weight, that's when you reach failure. So your body sequentially recruits muscle fibers from slow twitch to fast twitch. This is known as Henneman's size principle, right? And that's what exercise aims to do. It aims to basically sequentially recruit the slow twitch all the way to the highest, biggest muscle fiber, right? Which would be like the high order motor units, which are only really recruited during muscle failure, when you reach muscle failure. This is why high intensity training is exercise, because it's by taking your muscles to, it's by taking your set to muscle failure that allows the physiological adaptations to occur, like muscle strength and size, and all the other trainable factors I just listed. Okay? Cardio does not do this. Or at least it does, but it's super ineffective. Right? Running will not make you grow more muscle in your legs. That's why it's not exercise. Now people might say, oh, well, but running does cardio. So does strength training. By aggressively taking your leg press to one set to failure, you have hyper efficient venous return, which is basically the amount of blood that's pumped back to the heart. And what ends up happening, because it's a venous return, right, you have extremely high stroke volume. So you actually get extremely high cardiac output as a benefit of taking your set to failure on a leg press, right? Now the thing with running is it's not actually efficient for heart health even, because the thing with running is that the stroke volume is very low because there's poor venous return. The reason why there's poor venous return during running is just mainly because the muscle contractions are very quick and abrupt, right? Because when you run, you're just you're just like constantly contracting and uncontracting muscles. Like it's not providing continuous load like a leg press or a very slow bicep curl. Like if I had to do like a bicep curl very slowly, like I can provide continuous load on the muscle, and I can continuously inroad the muscle. But when you're running, you're doing this, right? Like you're contracting and then uncontracting, and you're just doing this, right? So what happens is you have poor venous return, and because there's not the continuous muscular loading, the blood is not able to pump blood back to the heart as effectively. So what ends up happening is that in order to sustain the activity of running, your heart has to beat harder. Now your heart rate goes up, right? Now people might think this is a good thing, but this is not actually an ideal thing. This is not something you want, because you're making your heart work harder for something that you're doing in a very ineffective way. You can get the same response, if not even better response for your heart by taking a set to failure on a leg press. Because like I said, of the stroke volume you get. Stroke volume is the amount of blood ejected from the heart. All right, you get extremely high stroke volume due to the venous return, the efficient venous return that you get. Why? Because of the continuous muscular loading from doing one set to failure. So what ends up happening is that the total cardiac output as a whole ends up being higher on strength training than running. Even though your heart rate might be a little bit higher during running than your one set to failure, it makes up for that by having extremely high stroke volume. The one set to failure on a leg press makes up for the lower heart rate by having extremely high stroke volume, which most people don't take into account of. Most cardiologists are clueless about this. It's actually insane. They don't actually understand the body. It's like, wow. It's like, when you think 2 seconds about it, it actually makes sense, right? But the equation for cardiac output is stroke volume times heart rate, right? And it equals cardiac output. So cardiac output is the key indicator of cardiovascular adaptations. This is basically how much your cardiovascular system actually ends up working. But your heart is actually heavily involved by taking your set to failure, if not more than the actual running. Even though your heart rate is pumping and huffing, right? It's not a good thing, because it's basically trying to do something, right, in a less efficient way. So your heart has to work harder, right? So the whole idea of you need to do running for heart health is debunked, because you can get the same, if not better, benefits of heart health with strength training. Like I said, I just explained, hyper efficient venous return leading to increased stroke volume, which results in high cardiac output and ultimately provides cardiovascular adaptations. So one set to failure on a leg press will not only just provide heart health benefits, but will also increase muscle strength and size in the legs, which cardio does not do. That's why it's not exercise. Do you guys understand now? People say, how do I train my heart? How do I work my heart? It all comes down to doing hard work with your muscles. Okay? When you work your muscles hard, your cardiovascular system ends up having to work hard also. Whether you're running or you're doing strength training. But the one set to failure strength training method is just more efficient because it's safer. It's more time efficient. Okay, when you do one set to failure in a leg press, especially if you do it the way I tell you to, which is very slow rep tempoed, you don't end up putting wear and tear on your joints. Whereas when you run, your joints have a lifespan. When you can't run every day because eventually your joints will end up wearing out because there's a lot of shock on the floor when you run. Okay, so it's not good for your body. You can get the same, if not better, benefits of both heart health and muscle strength by doing high intensity strength training. This is why cardio is not exercise. That's why. Because it does not do those things. It does not increase muscle strength and size. It doesn't effectively inroad in fatigue muscle, and it's a less efficient way of improving your heart. That's an erroneous assumption to think that the only way you can improve your heart health is by doing cardio. False. They're wrong. Because like I just explained, strength training also provides heart health benefits if you do it properly. Like I said, most people aren't even training properly in the first place. So it's hard to convince people on this, right? But if you do strength training the way I tell you to, you'll have elite cardiovascular health, elite heart health. Your heart will be elite, okay? If you do strength training the way I tell you to. Because through scientific research, we discovered that what actually induces cardiovascular adaptations is the upregulation of AMPK pathway and basically mitochondrial biogenesis, mitochondrial proliferation. So these are like the adaptations that happen when you increase your heart health, right? These are like what people deem as heart health benefits. So actually, most of the cardiovascular adaptations don't happen at the heart. They happen around the periphery of the muscle cells. So your muscles are actually just as involved in your cardiovascular system as your actual heart. People think the cardiovascular system is just about your heart. It's actually no. Your muscles are actually also connected to your heart and also the entire cardiovascular system too. So when your body proliferates more mitochondria within the muscle cells by taking your set to failure, you're also, as a byproduct, improving your heart health, right? This is why when you add more mitochondria within the muscle cells, your resting heart rate actually lowers. So people think that a resting heart rate is a good indicator of, good heart health, and this is true. But most people think that it's because they strengthen the heart. It's like, no, the reason why the heart doesn't have to beat as hard when you improve your cardiovascular system is not because you actually improved your heart. It's actually because you added more mitochondria within the muscle cells. You have more muscle now. So what happens is now your muscles are taking most of the load of the heart. So now there's less load for the heart and more load for the muscles. That's what you want. You want your muscles to take up most of the blood and most of the load of the cardiovascular system. Not your heart. You don't want your heart to be working 24/7. You want to increase muscle mass so that you can make it easier on your heart. Do you guys understand? So this is the truth about cardio and basically cardiovascular adaptations. So you don't need to do cardio as long as you do high intensity strength training, because you get all the benefits of heart health and muscle strength by doing strength training than doing cardio, right? So if you want to do cardio, that's fine, but you have to view that as recreation, not exercise. Cardio is not exercise, it's just recreation, okay? Because like I said, it doesn't effectively inroad in fatigue motor units. You don't grow muscle strength and size doing it. You don't improve your heart health even that by much. What true exercise is high intensity strength training. That is true exercise. And that's the truth about it. Most people won't tell you this, but that's the truth.